against the police department through the police commission. And, you know, I really felt compelled to do so because, you know, I served this community for 26 years, and what I see is wrong, right? You know, in the police code of ethics, you're supposed to protect the population, and I see an abuse of the population and of the people of the county and of the law in particular. And it's interesting because, you know, as a police supervisor, you're the first line of complaints. I get all the complaints right to the receiving desk. They want to speak to the supervisor. They don't get to the captain until they go through me, and they don't get to the chief until they go, you know, up the line. You know how that works, right? Everybody's workplace works like that. So my entire career, with all the things that can go wrong in policing, I've been able to mediate 100% of any complaint that came to me. No officer got complaint or a complaint against a police officer that went through me made it to the police commission, because I was able to resolve it and mediate it, you know, through ho'oponopono and, you know, working out the issue with the people and train the officer, you know, and just trying to maintain relationships. You know, you don't want the officer upset, but you don't want the community upset. So it's really ironic that the one complaint that gets to the commission is actually from me. So I just wanted to start with that. And I gave this class on the strategy, but just to give you some background information, give context to what I'm talking about, I'm just going to give a little bit of background information. So I really started heavily studying protest strategy and procedures and tactics in policing, because I knew that, you know, as a supervisor, especially when I was a lieutenant in Waimea, during the 2015 protest and the 2014 DUI, when the Department of Interior came, I had to host that. And one of the government officials that was there, president of the Department of Interior, came and really started to learn about the issues, but also had to learn about tactics and procedures and how to do this, because it's kind of like an unknown thing in policing. We just kind of deal, a lot of times you just deal with things as they come up. But this is becoming more and more prevalent in America, major demonstrations. And some of them are because of police, you know, like the Blue Lives Matter things, other issues, a lot of economic things, Occupy issues, the Occupy Wall Street things. So, you know, I was studying it, and a really interesting thing that I came across is this thing is called the ICNL Protest Tracker. So if you ever, try Google it one time, just Protest Tracker. These are all the laws that they're legislating all throughout America, where they're trying to use the power of legislation to basically make protest and First Amendment activities illegal. It's astonishing. It's a felony offense to protest at a pipeline. A felony offense to support one of those protests. Criminalizing university protests. Sanctions for protests at schools. And this is where it really got to me, because I'm a union guy. Labor protests. Teachers cannot picket. Massive fines for teachers if they protest at the state capitol. You know, preventing certain workers from even striking, or not striking, but picketing or protesting. So, you know, this all has an economic component to it. And it really started to disturb me, because, you know, the police, we're that one group that's not allowed to strike, right? And we have a pretty strong union, but you know, it's just something that's always in the back of your mind, how we can't even support others. And union is that's the whole concept of union, right? Union together, and it's kind of fracturing the whole thing. So I saw it as a really disturbing trend. And so, you know, studying that, but, you know, when you get into policing tactics, when I started studying that specifically, historically what we use is, you know, in the past would be what they call conventional tactics, or escalated force tactics. We show up, if you escalate, we escalate. It's kind of like a riot thing, you know, depending on what group you were dealing with. And formations and tactics weren't really there, per se. Maybe some departments historically have dealt with a lot of protests, so they might have been better than others, but like Hawaii County, it really wasn't a thing with us. So it's something to kind of get on the stick with. um, through time, like I was explaining to a group earlier, we are a community policing agency. Community policing started back in the early 90s. And that's what revolutionized our department. Because before it was vastly different. You know, we were embattled, bad reputation with the community, press, you know, and when we came to community policing, it got to that realignment of priorities and what the public wants, and it became more transparent. And it got us out of our cars and talking to people and communicating, and it really revolutionized policing. And so during this era, it's been what the police been using, largely been called negotiated strategies, where they try to de-escalate things. You know, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to proactively establish communications with the protesters. They're going to take they're going to put themselves out there and go contact them. You know, they're going to wait for them to come. They're going to go contact them. Developing rapport, building trust, de-escalating tensions. And then, like you see in the 2015 protest with Captain Sherlock, setting rules of engagement. You're going to do what you got to do, we got to do what we got to do, but let's both agree that nobody gets hurt. Let's not take it to certain levels, you know. So you want to lay that out, because you want, God forbid, anybody get hurt. But you know, as police, we have this saying: everybody goes home at the end of the shift. We have a duty to our officers. We cannot put them in a bad situation, right? I mean, they're human beings too. So, but there's been some problems with negotiated strategies. Sometimes it doesn't work with these bigger protests. And what's come in the past decade is this thing called a counterinsurgency strategy, or they call it a COIN. And there's another kind of offshoot to that, what's called a strategic incapacitation strategy, where they try to incapacitate every facet of the movement or protest. And that's largely based on COIN strategies. So, you know, COIN strategies or counterinsurgency strategies is what they do in other nations like Afghanistan, Iraq. They do this nation building. And you've probably heard this term before, winning hearts and minds. So the publicity issue is a big thing with the COIN strategy. You want to win the support of populations and have them support you in your efforts. The things that you do, they kind of, you know, accept it. That started happening in America, and the one that probably garnered the most attention was Standing Rock. Did anybody watch that Standing Rock? That was brutal. People that never had any training, it's just kind of winging it with this attitude: we're the law, you know, obey kind of thing. And it just, that doesn't work, right? So what happened in Standing Rock is they brought in military contractors, and there's a lot of them out there. There's Green Berets that have formed corporations or groups, and they teach counterinsurgency strategies for drug, gang-related things, whatever. And it's kind of weird, because the community policing model and the COIN, you know, community policing is kind of winning hearts and minds too, and developing relationships and partnerships. So they kind of dovetail in a lot of ways. So sometimes it kind of resonates with the officers. But more so, being a heavily militarized industry, the police, we have a lot of ex-military personnel. So they've seen this before. It makes sense to them. And typically police officers, you know, it's kind of exhausting to have to do all this, you know, face-to-face thing. They just tell me what to do. It's kind of more easy, right? So with the COIN strategy, they bring in these contractors. In Standing Rock, it was Tiger Swan. Tiger Swan is like a competitor to Blackwater, just to kind of give you the idea. They also do counterterrorism. And there's a host of other ones, and they do this really multifaceted strategy. They take over the social media. They write all the media points for the press. They isolate the movement, jam communications, surveillance, everything. They even show them, like, you know, they really aggressively push for enforcement and things that where you can use any law to sanction people. Even if you arrest them, high bail. They encourage this kind of punitive action. And that's essentially how the COIN also works. All right. I kind of made an outline. Let me just get here, because you know, like I said, I'm not a teacher and I might skip around a lot, but I don't want to get off track. But That's what happened in Standing Rock, and that's a strategy that that you, like I said, really resonates with a lot of law enforcement people, because what's happening in America is you're getting this bizarre merging of military and police culture into this, just like this warrior culture. So when you say the troops now, you're not talking about just the military, you're talking about the police as well. And you know, through incident command structures, where they set up these structures for, you know, natural disasters and all that, it's easily adaptive policing. So you might have heard here, they keep referring to the unified command. You ever heard that term, unified command? So that's what they've done, is set up an incident command structure. An incident command structure is, the structure of it and how it works was designed by FEMA. So we use it for natural disasters. You might have the fire department, you might have road crews, you have the police, you have everybody involved, integrated, and everybody knows their place in the hierarchy and chain of command. When you apply that to the police, you can effectively take multiple agencies from different levels, state, federal, county, whatever, and meld them into one law enforcement agency or one law enforcement command. So it's an interesting concept, and it's something that I you know, kind of always stuck in the back of my craw, because as we know in America, posse comitatus prevents the military from being used on domestic soil. And that's something that the American founding fathers were very, very aware of. Back in those days, standing armies were a threat to all populations. They rampaged Europe. We did not want one here. So, you know, all these Second Amendment guys will always talk about that. But through this ICS thing, and depending on what's going on with populations, you can effectively create a domestic force. So we have one force that deals with our issues internationally and one domestically. Both getting supplied by the same contractors. Obviously, the police don't have airplanes and bombs and all that, but interesting note is back in the battle of with the coal miners of West Virginia, back in the Great Depression days, it only restricted, posse comitatus only restricted the Army. What about the Air Force? Well, they bombed up the coal miners during those labor wars, you know, so they had to kind of revamp that whole thing. But getting back to my point about this structure, so you see it here where you have multiple agencies, sheriffs, DoCare, you got police from Maui, police from Oahu, AGs, fire department, National Guard. That's why it's a unified command. You don't have just one agency running, you have multiple, all having a stake in a share. And of course the AG is, I guess, commander-in-chief, like how the military works, right? Because everything stays under civilian control. So if you remember, like the 2015 protests, you remember Captain Sherlock would go up there, very non-threatening, just holding a cup of coffee, hey, how's it everybody, talking to them. And there was a lot of respect shown, you know, back and forth. And as Islanders and Kanakas, it was understood that, hey, we're not going to take things to a certain level. And that was his way of negotiating. That's a negotiated strategy of de-escalation and setting rules of engagement. So when you see that coming to the 2019 Kapuna protest, those rules were already established. And this movement has had a history of nonviolence, right? The way they came in, just kind of walking in, non-information, going through the crowd, you know, police officers typically don't do that. What they were doing was reciprocating, right? Because they don't want to escalate. You show us aloha, we show you aloha. So it's a trust thing, right? And the way that they arrested the Kapuna, I mean, the cuffs weren't even tight, nothing, you know, it's kind of formality. And then afterwards, still maintain the relationship. Understand you guys got to do your job, you know, but we don't hold it against you, and kind of vice versa. Children taking meals from the Kapuna tent to the officers, the DoCare officers. HPD was patrolling the highway. They were enforcing, and everybody waving when they went by, and they waved back. It's like, you know, everybody's in this bad position, but you know, we just gotta let's stay a community, right? And I was coming up to the classes, and I was just amazed by this community. And then one day, everything just changed like that. And that was the day I got a call, my wife, panicking, because there's 6 cars pulled over, all with women. And the police are just swarming the area. And that's when they started this enforcement effort. And if you go back, then that's also when the incident commander's report came out. Remember that? I don't know if it was published very much. I'll try to post that. But there's an article, I think it was Mahalani Richardson has it, where they get the court documents of what happened up here. And the article's police commander, or incident commander, describes it as a volatile day. That's like the title.
His name?
Samuel Jelsma, the incident commander. Yeah, I used to work with him. He's a good man. But in his report, what I saw drained the blood out of me, my face. The way things were characterized, you know, that's the thing where the puohe was now a stick.
Yeah, weapon.
And in one single sentence, no punctuation, people wearing masks, moving throughout the crowd, repositioning themselves with sticks. What does that sound like? That sounds like an imminent threat, right? And then people don't understand this, but one of the laws that they're changing about protest too is they're trying to lower the threshold on what's a riot. So in all these states, a lot of them, they're trying to change the law to lower it. And it's getting dismissed. The crazy thing is, what they're trying to lower it to is what the Hawaii state law is for a riot. We have the lowest one in the nation. So a riot is when 5 or more people are engaged in disorderly conduct. So the actual behavior of this offense is actually the behavior in a petty misdemeanor. You're using something from like a petty misdemeanor, which is fighting, threatening, tumultuous behavior, unreasonable noise, all that kind of stuff, causing alarm. That happens every day. It's happening right now. People get arrested for disorderly conduct. People in the area drunk or whatever. But the one component more that you need for a riot is a danger. Those 5 people acting disorderly with a dangerous instrument, right? So then the AG's, her words was that she described it as this situation up here as a, and I'll put in quotes, combustible cocktail of factors. And I want you to remember that phrase, that really obscure combination of words. And I'll come back to that later, and maybe even talk about that in another class. But that had me really, really concerned, because then all of a sudden things escalated. And what I started seeing really, really disturbed me, because this is not how we do enforcement. No way, shape, or form analytically for traffic or based on need or anything does it match up. And then the incessant roadblocks in military uniforms. And it's interesting because the ACLU actually, before this all started, they sent a letter out to all the police chiefs, the AG, the governor, everybody, warning them not to do everything that they're doing. So what happened with this? You know, the Hawaii County Police Department is renowned for its community policing skills, for its ability to engage with the public. And now everything's backwards, you know. So what was going on? And that's when I started staying up here, because originally I was going to start writing about this movement in terms of the social aspect. I was done with law enforcement. That was one part of my life, and I was trying to move on. But then that just completely captivated me, because it dominated what was going on up here. You couldn't stop thinking about it, because then I started staying up here at night because I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. I would come up, 10 officers in the middle of nowhere running a DUI roadblock. You know, if I'd have done that when I was an officer, I'd have been written up, charged with theft of funds. Like, where's the expectation of? There's an expectation of performance. Like, what are you doing in the middle of nowhere? Are you sandbagging us? You know what I mean? And the methodology of DUIs, you're everywhere. I did an analysis of DUI-related deaths, because I had to come up with an ops plan for, or put input into this ops plan for what we were going to do, because we have a really, really high DUI-related fatality rate on this island. And some years we lead the nation per capita in DUI-related deaths. So from my previous analysis is we got to be everywhere. There's no one particular thing. So Saddle Road is not the threat for DUI-related fatalities. I was here for the first fatality on this road as the Waimea lieutenant, the first incident commander up here for the first death when they opened this highway. And we did send 20 officers up here for that. You know, so none of this makes sense. It's wildly disproportionate. Everybody can see it for what it is. The county council is constantly pointing out the chief's in there gaslighting everybody, and it's like, come on, you know, but doing it anyways. Then staying up here, I started seeing more things: the false raids, the disinformation, and this is deliberate disinformation. I know what that is. I was in the military during the Cold War. We used to have the Russians parked right outside our base jamming us, and this whole informational war going on. I recognize it for what it is, you know, and this is basically psyops, you know. So that's, you know, some of the things about a coin. So, you know, what exactly is the difference in a coin besides a different negotiated strategy? It's heavily influencing public perception, controlling media narratives. And the main focus is, focuses are going to be on themes that are divisive. Right? You're going to avoid the actual issue by talking about different things. Using political leaders, agency managers, media outlets, business community members, and even civic groups to collaborate in projecting themes and targeted messages, specifically targeted messages. Attacking sources of funding. Enhanced surveillance techniques, psyops, I mentioned that. Creating hard zones or militarized zones. See all those barriers out there, signs, denial tactics where you can't, you know, and that they use that in strategic incapacitation, where they're going to deny you territory. But these are the Occupy movements, and these movements in Standing Rock are different because they're occupying space, right? So it's a battle of that. And as it pertains to my complaint, what the police are doing, they've been assigned what's called populace and resource control measures, or control measures. You can actually download the handbook. I don't know why FEMA has an entire library on counterinsurgency strategies from Billy Crystal and General Petraeus and the whole gamut of guys that are doing this, but there it is, right in FEMA. I mean, you think it'd be at the Pentagon. This is all done through an ICS Unified Command Structure, and nothing they do is organic. Nothing. So if you look at, like, initially all the media topics that came out, maybe you guys can help me with some of them, but let's get started on this right here. And this is where, you know, it's like I said, winning the hearts and minds and support of the public is so important. So initially this was portrayed as spirituality versus science. Yeah, it's going to be everything but the underlying issue, right? The economic benefits, right? Then they you know, remember that multi-agency press conference about the unsanitary conditions, and you're killing some plants and people running across the road. So you can probably remember them all. My favorite one is protesters preventing Western civilization from discovering extraterrestrial life. You know, honestly, if they know what was going on down here, if extraterrestrial life knew that, what was going on down here and what we're like, they'd be down here protesting. That TNT are like, no. You can imagine the cast of Star Wars are like, we're dealing with the Empire already. We don't need yours, right? It's the craziest thing. But you saw that. Another big one, rule of law, right? There's no rule of law. I've never been for rule of law here for 50 years. Starting with the road, just stole the land, built a road, still haven't paid for it, still denied, you know. So it's just ridiculous. There's never been any rule of law. If anything, this movement, the Kiai, they've been up here on this road demanding the rule of law. I mean, they've never applied any laws up here. They're running a racket up here. It's a scheme. That mountain is monopolized by foreigners. You try to drive up there. I have a constitutional right to go up. I can't go up there, but 90 cars go up there. And when the police stop you, they don't even give you a reason. They don't even know why. So we ask them, well, why can't you go? I don't know. I was told to tell you you can't. I've shut this highway down many times. I shut every road on this island down, or main artery at one time or another as a patrolman or a sergeant or a lieutenant. And I always had a legitimate reason, right? Sometimes people didn't like it. You know, the road's flooded, they still want to get to the airport, you know, whatever, but we had a legitimate reason. Now they can't even tell you why. But when you watch the astronomy community drive up that mountain, they don't even brake check them. They don't even roll down the window or even wave to the officers. They're just servants, you know, so it's really incredible, you know, how this this whole thing is panned out. But not to get into those issues too much and to focus back more on what's going on here. So originally, the money for reimbursement is contingent on the police department controlling the road. Well, we don't really know what that means. But clearly, they were already enforcing. So why are they, was this reinforcing? I mean, I'm not really sure, but why did they have to come up with an enforcement effort, right? The amount of officers that is assigned up here, this really pisses me off because I had to fight a lot of major issues. I was trying to shut down the burglaries in Puna. We got auto thefts going on everywhere, all kinds of mayhem. I'd have to either go out there by myself or one or two officers to deal with these issues. Now they have more officers here that are assigned to the North Kohala Police Station. Right? I mean, you know, millions of dollars. So, you know, it really is the craziest thing. And, you know, when you're running these roadblocks, and this comes right out of the field manual. I could read it to you verbatim. But it says basically run checkpoints and roadblocks all the time to control the population and the resources that are going in and the support. So that's what it is, you know. It's not a DUI checkpoint. We don't do DUI checkpoints like that. First of all, you're not even supposed to be in a military uniform. Our general orders say that you can only wear that uniform in public under a special operation. So they classify this as a special operation. But generally it's done, you know, when I was in the military, you couldn't even wear that uniform in public. So now you got tourists coming through, and they're wondering if they landed in Hawaii or Nicaragua. You know, how bad is it? I mean, I have tourists stopping here, Europeans, people from Asia, asking me, what's going on with the military down the road? I mean, you're running a checkpoint night after night in the same damn place in front of a military installation wearing a green uniform, and you haven't figured this out? It's intimidating, right? It just doesn't look right. I mean, I remember when we went on a warrant sweep, and my officers went into town to get lunch, 3 of them in battle dress uniforms, the BDUs, and the phone was ringing off the hook in the police station. What's going on? What? You know, it kind of gives people anxiety when they see that, right? So that's why the police uniform looks like a civil servant, as much as possible. A lot of places, even a lot of jurisdictions, they wear ties and stuff like that. We're not the military. So what happened here, where a community policing institution whose mission statement is literally, the Hawaii Police Department is committed to preserving the spirit of aloha. That's the mission statement. Cast aside all this and just do something completely contrary. Because even when you're looking at, you know, when we talk about negotiated strategies, you want to de-escalate because you want people getting hurt, especially your officers. Why would you purposely do something that's going to upset a crowd? And according to the commander here, he said it was a 10-to-1 ratio of 10 kiai to every officer. Why would you take a chance of inciting those numbers? I mean, it's kind of crazy, but it's those numbers that reveal the reason why, because that's the problem. There's too much people here. Because this movement has resonated with so much people, and people see the injustice of it, despite the majority of the public not really fully understanding the fullness of the story of Maunakea and the injustice of it. They're starting to learn about it, right? And despite, you know, them trying to shift you off into different things about this and that or whatever, people understand it. And it's swelling the ranks. So, you know, to use a military term, I guess, where the movement's growing. People all over the world are watching it. The whole world is watching it, and you're doing this. That's the problem. Nothing else is working. So what they're doing is, in the old days, they call this an old military style denial tactic. So it's good for geographical areas. So if you're like in Kandahar, Afghanistan, or whatever, you're trying to control an area, do this nation building thing, you're going to cut off the road. Say like there's a rebel group over there somewhere. You're going to cut off the road and supplies and everything to it, right? You're going to screen everybody heavily. Even in the manual, it says stop them and check their car registrations and use that against them. The military even uses this tactic, you know. So if you have a police department that has a plethora of ordinances, you know, so speeding was the big one. Let me just give you context. The Puna Police, the monthly traffic goal, or quota, or whatever you want to call it, semantics, is 525 citations. They were exceeding that on a weekly basis up here. 90 speeding citations, just to show that we're at least doing speeding enforcement in Puna. You know, it's kind of prorated to the population averages. They did 291 tickets in 1 week. I mean, where was that effort when I was your supervisor? You know, it was hard. It's like, we have to do this in between calls and all that. It's not easy. So it's wildly disproportionate, but it's very effective. Because I've talked to many people in the community, and they all say the same thing. I want to go up, but I'm scared. I'm afraid of the police. Well, children are afraid of the police. Got to pick up a friend at Kona Airport. They want to drive around the whole damn island because they're afraid of guys that they used to call uncle. You know, that's how deeply this has affected us. And this is Hawaii. We don't act like that. And you know, the police department knows this is happening. But the demand is so great. Because what's happened with the state, as usual with the government, they dump the whole damn thing on the police department. Right? This is not a police problem. But it's typical how government works. The state, with what they've been doing, it's not Pono, and it's caused every agency to kind of domino with them in this whole racket and scheme of their kleptocratic behavior, is what it is. Just say it for what it is. At that level, that's what it is. So now you got DNR handing off all of their responsibility as a government to a special interest group, right? It's like, I'm a police officer. I don't just take my gun and badge and everything. Can you just take care of my job? You know, we don't do that. You got people that are supposed to be running trusts, they're in charge of trusts, advocating for special interests and not their clients or the beneficiaries. You got conservation officers waiting to escort bulldozers to bulldoze conservation land. And you got police officers criminalizing their own population. That's what happens. So with the police, the government always pushes things, does things in the wrong way, you know, dumps it on the police. Here, deal with the homeless problem. You want me to build houses now? Well, we know exactly what you mean when you say that. Make them disappear. Get them out of sight. Go somewhere else. We always have to use force. All we can do is enforce laws. That's our tool, right? We don't swing hammers. But the government likes to swing the police as a hammer. They always want to reach in that toolbox, grab the police, and swing it at that problem. And we're not designed for that. That's not our job. You created this can of worms, and now you want to dump it on us, right? What's another one? You know, you have homeless, drug problems, crime. I can't fix poverty. So, the police is just like this problem managing agency. We can't solve things. That is society to solve these things, right? What's happening here is a reflection of what's gone wrong with our government and our society. And now they want to use the police. They want to reach in that toolbox again. Well, what do we have to make this thing end? Traffic enforcement, whatever. So it kind of perverts the law. You're not applying the spirit of the law. You're applying the letter of the law. You're going to find a way, like Honolulu did, to make that flag a violation, even though the statute doesn't even fit it, right? You're gonna lose. You're not using discretion. Stop a car, light them up. Every possible thing wrong with it. Heard one guy got $700 in tickets. Well, that sends a signal. So they're saying, this isn't targeting. But they've never done this before. I can tell you that. Because even with the fire, we had a firebug in Waimea that was constantly lighting these fields on fire. We saw that with 2 officers. That was, that's potential. That's destruction and potential death. So 2 officers present, pow, right? Problem solved. Some of the biggest problems, 1 or 2 officers present. We got more people in the North Kohala Station down here. So we know, and it's obvious. And when you confront leaders about it, you just get stonewalled with this thing, right? So it's obviously a tactic to do this. And this is the most dangerous thing that can happen in a society, is when you greenlight the police or you normalize infringement of civil rights. That is the worst possible thing you can do. Yes, sir.
So are the courts being complacent with that too? Are they questioning that, or?
That has to be challenged in the courts because the courts aren't proactive.
But are the judges going along with that? And
I don't know if anybody's had any court cases that have come up, but like I said, they're not proactive. They can see it, but it's not for them to act on it, right?
So my favorite right now is how they keep on telling us how much it costs to have the police here, and making saying, look, because these guys are here, look how much money we gotta spend,
Right.
And I'm thinking, everybody's in Kapualoa. How many police do you need up here? Or do you need any if everybody's in Kapualoa? And so to me, that's a misappropriation on the police behalf of funding, state or county funds, whoever's paying the police. That's a misappropriation by them on funds that, like you said, should be used on more important things,
I think a lot of people in the state are really upset about that. And recently, they just had the hearing on the funds, right? Mm-hmm. So the county council's been asking, what's the deal here? You have this gentleman's agreement that you're going to get reimbursed. But when it comes to money, you always have that in writing. It's not done on a handshake. I mean, you might, have a meeting of minds, but then we get to see it on paper before we commit, right? Well, they went through almost $5 million waiting for this agreement to come from the state that they're going to get reimbursed. The interesting thing is that money is supposed to be through advice and consent of the legislature. So the county council is supposed to be able to see what's going on. And then they can approve it. They can approve the agreement to enter into agreement. And then they ratify it later. All that was skipped. And then they came in to get it ratified, to get it rubber stamped. And they asked, well, where's the agreement? Well, we didn't bring one, but we'll show it to you. So the interesting thing about this is that it wasn't just the reimbursement. They doubled down on the amount of money. So now we're on the hook for something, obviously for future operations, but you can't do that to the population. Commit their money to something they don't know what it is and circumvent that process. So everything is kind of all these processes, everything in the way government's supposed to work. And like I said, when you're infringing on constitutional rights, that's the most dangerous thing you can do. You know, it's one thing for officers or police maybe to go too far in trying to catch a bad guy or make a case against a criminal drug dealer or something like that, which shouldn't happen. It's another thing entirely to do that to your population. Okay, we know what that triggers. And the U.S. Constitution specifically addressed that. They didn't want that happening. And you know, so this is something that well, the state is undermining the real law themselves up here. And in the process, they're delegitimizing themselves as a legitimate government. But this, the totality of this with it, this is undermining democracy. It's a very dangerous thing. And you know, with police departments, we normally feel constrained by laws and these things. You know, everybody says, why? You know, there's laws and Constitution it protects the criminals. No, it doesn't. I mean, they obviously take advantage of these protections, but it was designed for this, right? You know, so when you read this commander's report, it's named FOB Kaliloa, which means Field Operation B Kaliloa. And B Kaliloa is Bronson Kaliloa. He's the officer that died in Puna. And that operation, the Kapuna arrest, was the 1-year anniversary of his death. And I find it ironic that, and I understand they probably were trying to honor him and just keep his name alive, but when you name an operation like this after a fallen Kanaka officer,
It's disrespectful.
and he was a union guy. Because before he was an officer, he was a bus driver, and he picketed. He went on strike. He knew. Devastates me. You know, when I think about Bronson. But you know, what's happening here and all these problems. You look at Kahuku. They had to put themselves there on the road. I mean, what community wouldn't do that, right? And everybody just watched. And then right after they do that, other communities now try to legislate laws to protect themselves from getting these stupid windmills. So that shows that they knew this was wrong. That was an injustice. And they used the police, the Honolulu police, again, these special interests and government officials that backed them, they used the Honolulu police like a hammer. And you know, this is an industry that has incredibly high rates of depression. For the 3rd year in a row, we lost more officers nationwide to suicide than to line of duty deaths. That's just from doing the job. Now you're going to add this to it? You talk about historical trauma. A lot of those officers were Kanaka. They got to carry that. You know, so the only thing for this thing to end is that TMT just pulls out. Because this state has lost their mind. I don't know what they're thinking. You know, we're going to clear this road for the next 9 years. That's what's going to happen. Is it worth it? You know, when you look at this monopoly of Maunakea, 13 telescopes. They decades ago they said that was enough already. But look at TMT. The footprint of it is the size of Aloha Stadium. It's bigger than all the other telescopes combined. So when you build TMT, that's the 26th telescope in landmass when you think about it. And that's what this is all about. The mountain is saturated, and you know, so that's the only way I see it. We just don't want this happening, period. But TMT doesn't care, and the state is willing to do what it's got to do. So here we are. And And so, you know, I hope that provides context and background to why I made my complaint. Because ultimately, injustices rely on the police. People or whatever groups are they need to use, when they need to force it on people, they use armies or they use police forces. And that's not what we are. And we're not going to do that to our own people.